Hey, the outward mindset. You guys ready for it?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
a
my
great
first
book.
question, though, I have to say,
You want me to show it?
sure, I was going to hold it up too. I'm
Oh, okay.
holding. Yeah. Um, which one did you guys like better? Because this is a book in conjunction with leadership and self-deception. Which one did you guys like better? Did you like them both?
I enjoyed them both. I think that leadership and self-deception was better personally. But I think that mostly because that one applies more, I feel like, to being a leader and to business and things like that. This one seems to just, it does relate to business, but it seems like I don't know how to put it. It's more like for your personal outlook on life almost. Was that how
Okay.
you would say it?
Well, I can see what you're saying. I, however, was opposite. Maybe
Really?
because it was my third reading of Leadership and Self-Deception, third time I've read
Okay.
it. And so I think this one, the outward mindset. So like I was when we were messaging to set up this meeting, and I said it answers the big questions. Because when we were talking about leadership and self-deception, um, a big discussion that we had was, how do we stay out of the box? How do we get out of the box and how do we stay out? And to me, this book answers that more than any other book. It's kind of like the how-to manual on what your mindset needs to look like to stay out of the box. And so for me, that is actually something that I have taken, and I feel like that is one of the things that has made me the most successful in my business. Besides any other structures or systems or policies or procedures or anything that I do in my business, I think being out of the box when I'm dealing with my clients is the key to my success.
Well, I mean, it talks about that in the book, right? It talks about different businesses and how when they have an outward mindset, how their business grows and flourish. Like it's just, and then when you don't, like things just go downhill super quick.
Yeah.
I mean, there
Oh,
was that one example in there where they were, and then they were thinking about themselves and it
yes.
just plummeted, right? So,
That was so fascinating. That was like one of my most favorite stories. If you're talking about the Arbinger
The
group,
authors, yeah, the
yeah,
author of the book,
how
right?
they found themselves being inward.
yeah. And
Right.
they were going to go talk on it. Wasn't it like they were going
Yeah.
to do a presentation or
Yeah.
something? And
Yeah.
somebody's like, hey, we are not
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
It's so perfect. Like, so for me personally, Austin, you don't know this, but like I try to pick a word every year. I know a lot of people do, so I'm not that special, but I had a word or two. Sometimes I have two words. So I had a word or two picked out for this year. And then I had a conversation where I realized my word needs to be realignment. And which is perfect timing because I've been launching this online course and trying to get that up and running as a second business. And I haven't been able to like duplicate results from one launch to another and have the success that I had hoped for. And what I think I finally realized, even before I read this, but this helps solidify it, is just like what my focus was. So my focus on the first one was just legit. Like my first launch was just, I'm going to see how many people I can help. The second launch was what I'm going to make a bunch of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure maybe the first one went better.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Like I had things more organized and more set up for the second one. And it asked me again, it was a learning launch. But so I realized that that's what I need to be doing in my business. I need to get back to that mode of how can I help people? Like, what is it that they need? And, interestingly enough, that's what they talk a lot about in marketing, you know, forums and whatever. They're talking about like, you need to know what your audience needs.
Well, it's any sort of business, right? What's their needs? How are you solving them?
So
What do
fascinating.
they actually want rather than what you think they want?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Megan? What was your takeaway from leadership and self-deception versus the outward mindset?
I was trying to decide because I liked both of them a lot for different reasons. Um, and I think you need both together to make
Yeah.
it like a fully functioning group, right? But I definitely think if you're gonna read one, I think you almost need to start with leadership and self-deception just because it's a good starting point. The read is super easy.
So easy.
It's
They're both
relatable,
easy, but
right? But this one, it's like Stephanie said, though, it really like brings it all together and really
Right.
makes you see that mindset is the key. And I loved like the stories and examples that they share in here. Like there's lots of examples, which is really great. But I love at the end too, like at the very end of it, they basically do a call to action. Like, what are you going to do now? Like, how are you going to change yourself? And I love that the whole like premises of this book is like, what can I do to be more helpful? That's essentially an outward mindset, is asking that question for everything.
that's a great question to ask myself every morning.
Yeah.
Start my day.
And that is like
Maybe
on the
more helpful.
last little bit of the book. That's what they ask.
Hey, what page?
Page 165 is, what can I do to be more helpful? That's like the premises of a whole being outward mindset is, what can I do to be more helpful? And
Okay.
leave it to anything. They gave examples, right? But
I like what they say too. The outward mindset allows us to see others' needs and challenges and objectives rather than our own. So how more appropriate for a business to see others' objectives and needs and whatever else, that they, what someone needs other than what you need. That's the whole purpose of having a business, isn't it?
yeah.
It's fulfilling needs.
Well, I mean, I have an example of that from this last week because I'm on a new adventure creating an app for a desktop app to help content creators align. It's strategic content planning is basically what it does. And I'm sitting here designing it, and I'm designing it for what I think people need, right?
I mean, you have to start somewhere. So
yeah, you have to start
Yeah, you
somewhere.
have to start somewhere.
But like I was having a conversation with my husband, and he is like, that's what he does, is managing products. And he was like, okay, I understand like what you're saying, but like how are you helping the customer? Like, is this really what they want? And, I'm like trying to defend like, no, this is what it is. And then I was sitting there like, oh my gosh, I'm reading outward mindset and I'm not outward mindset right now.
Well, yeah, like how valuable is that to have somebody right there giving you, like feedback before you even develop anything?
Yeah. And so guess what I did?
Nope.
Right after that, I was scheduling calls with people. I was messaging people like, hey, can you have a chat with me about this new thing? Because guess what? I need to talk to people. But
Were you just
so
getting their
easy.
input?
Yeah, I'll be getting their input. So that's happening in a couple
So
days.
did you back up and like take note of all the things that Eric was saying?
Yeah, so that was the thing. Like after we had the conversation, it was sitting there like, wow, it's so easy to switch. Like, because I'm like trying to have an outward mindset is going into it, but it's so easy to flip it.
Turn defensive, right?
Yes. And like, I'm like, so how do you
whatever?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, as I'm sitting there and he's telling me this, I'm like sitting there like, he's totally right. Like, he's totally right. Like, as I'm sitting here and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Right. Like, I admitted it, but like in the moment I was like, what the heck am I doing? Yeah.
That's
So
really cool.
I just want to make a note that it is so easy to think you have an outward mindset. And it's lovely that you have people to call you out on it.
Mm-hmm.
That you're really not as outward mindset as you're thinking you are at that moment.
Well, I think, maybe I just like to find some excuse. I don't know, probably. I like to not take all the ownership of it, but I like to think that, we like as a society in general, we're all kind of taught that way. And I want to blame it on this or that or whatever, but we're kind of, I think, all brought up to, look for like just like what I'm doing right now, like look for a reason, explain something away,
Well,
you know,
it's justification, right?
justification, blame. Yep.
Justification.
Brings it back to leadership and
Yep.
self-deception. That's why I was like,
Yep.
that book you have to read first to
Yeah.
really, I don't think you could read this book and get the same impact without leadership and self-deception
Yeah,
first.
Yeah.
And so that's
I
why I'm
agree.
like, I think you have to have that book first.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm curious, because we're going to read The Anatomy of Peace, right? That's what it's called. Yeah. In the future. So I'm curious to see like what we think of that, like in conjunction, like, will all three of these like tie something spectacular together,
So,
right? So
yeah, the thing that I love about it all in general is I've done all these other, like I guess studies of human behavior. I've taken personality quizzes and read books on, like men are from Mars and women are from Venus, those kinds of books, just different to just understand different types of people, love languages, love and logic parenting or positive parenting, like all these different things for all these different pieces of my life. And the thing I love about these books in particular is that it disseminates everything down. If like the Gottmans who have been studying marriage for whatever 50 years or something, like all of these other things, to me, it all boils down exactly to what the Arbinger group has put together. They disseminate it down into the most basic core behavior, in my opinion. And I think that's what I love the most about the principles and how they're teaching it, is just that, and I say principles, but again, I really feel like it's just like this one core behavior almost. It's just like, look at people as people with needs and objections and concerns and, problems and whatever. Like, what's the story? It's actually, like that's what I love about the work that I do, is I get to hear people's story and, kind of like do my work in response to their story. And I think that more people in business should do that. More people in relationships should do that. Every day, when somebody cuts us off on the freeway, we can tell ourselves whatever story we want because we don't know them, probably. So we can either say they're big jerks and super inconsiderate, and obviously, whatever swear word we want to assign to them. Or we can say, oh my gosh, they must have some sort of like medical emergency, and I'm going to make way for them. Like, you can just feel how, like the chemicals in your body are responding to those two different stories that you tell yourself about a situation like that. And so if we just start to take that into perspective and application in our everyday lives, I think in every situation that we have, we can apply these concepts.
Yeah, I don't know what your guys' perception was. I feel like for this book, they kind of like challenge the idea that behaviors of people is based on like personality. It's almost like, I think a lot of people believe that they behave how they are because of who they are, but they go down to say you behave how you do because of your mindset. Do you feel like that's what you got out of this book for the most part?
That's a good way to put it.
yeah.
That your mindset controls behavior?
Totally.
Yes.
Well, think of the story about the was he Irish? That dad who was like worked in a mine, I think, during the day, and they came home and like farmed and stuff, and he was always
The
beating.
really angry one?
Yes, he was always like
Oh, yeah.
beating the farm
Mhm.
animals and stuff, and then his son started to adopt those same behaviors, and he just changed overnight from this angry, upset, like trigger happy kind of guy to compassionate and caring and, slow to anger. So I think that because his mindset changed about, he cared more about somebody else than himself suddenly.
So I mean that goes with we have this conversation with my middle child. I mean he's in elementary school, fifth grade, and he's sitting here. We've been telling him, it depends on how you go into the day. Like, how are you feeling about school before? What's your mindset towards school? Is it that you don't want to go? Because guess what? It's going to suck the whole day. And so he's been telling me that, Mom, I changed my mindset about something, and it was wonderful after that. So like it's just that little switch. And he's like, it was great after that. Like it wasn't so bad anymore. It's manageable at that point rather than this is horrible, right?
Mhm.
And it was something in particular at school, but I don't remember what it was. But it's the whole purpose is that he changed his mindset towards that thing. And he's like, it doesn't mean that still doesn't really suck all that. Like it's just better.
Right.
The same school, but his perception is much more
Same
positive.
school, same teachers, same classmates, same experiences.
Yep. And he's like, I enjoyed it now. So
go figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think mindset is a huge thing when it comes to the way you feel and behave and all the other things.
So go ahead, Austin.
Oh, I was going to say that first story that they used, the SWAT story. Did you guys remember that one?
Oh, yeah, with the baby bottles.
Yeah, the baby bottles. So, what my biggest takeaway from that was, they went from a whole ton of complaints down to zero, right? And all that shifted was how they looked. Well, actually, really, they started considering other people's situation, right?
Well, they saw the people as people, not just
they saw the people
or whatever, that they needed to like spit their chewing tobacco on and whatever. Like,
well, and I liked how they specifically said, we didn't train that in this situation,
right?
When we find screaming kids, let's make baby bottles, right? Like they had that mindset towards others, and they found this situation, and they found a solution to that problem without being trained on the situation in the past.
Well, I love it too. He said that he didn't even think about it. Like it was another person that was doing it. And he's like, yeah, like
it makes it so that leaders in whatever organization you have, whether it's at home, at church, at school, in your business, in the community, whatever, if you have this set up within your organization this way, it makes it so suddenly there does not need to be micromanagement. There doesn't need to be like a list of do's and don'ts and rules and policies and da 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 da. It allows people to actually think and respond. I mean, because it feels like all of the case studies, all of the stories that they shared from, the company that they couldn't reveal the name of, where they had to cut the $10 million, whatever, like nobody told them how to cut the $10 million. It just had to be cut. They figured it out. The West End Police Department too, wasn't it also in Kansas City, I think. Anyway, how they were able to clean up that area,
Oh, yeah.
Just well, I love that. I love that story because they were struggling, and then the one lady just asked, "Well, how do these guys feel? Like the issues? Like how do these people actually feel? What are they going through?" And I think that's something we need to ask often too. Like, what are they going through so that I can relate to them?
Yeah,
and have
like
a different
the credit company. What was it?
I don't remember the name, but yeah, the credit company. Yeah.
Yeah, they are the collections. That's what it was. The collections company. Same thing. It's like they could either, just hound these people and squeeze them for whatever they can get out of them, or they can say, oh my gosh, they are struggling. Like, what can we do to help? Or the Vietnamese, lady in the hospital, like, what can we do to make it, how hard would that be if you don't understand what anybody is saying?
Yeah, let's get a translator.
Yeah, basic, right? So any of those stories is just like, put yourselves in other people's shoes. My favorite question from the whole book was, or I guess it's not a question, it's a statement. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the problem.
Which then makes me think of the Taylor Swift song. Like it kept going through my head like this whole
It's me.
book. I'm the
Oh,
problem, it's me.
no.
I'm the problem, it's me.
Oh no, not gonna be stuck in my mind the rest of the
You
day.
are welcome,
Thanks, Megan.
Austin.
Thanks.
But
So now
yeah,
you can
no.
think of that. I'm the problem, it's me.
Okay.
So I actually was introduced to leadership and self-deception. I think I told you guys from a former employer. And that one story that they told about the one leader who was just like, remember, as far as you're concerned, the problem is you. And the people are just like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. So just back to like what we were talking about, when other people are pointing it out to you, it doesn't feel as good as when you are the one who is able to step up and like put your big girl, big boy pants on, and just say like, I am the problem. Like, what can I do better? You're right. I did that wrong, and just start to make that change yourself.
Well, I want to bring that back to our conversation before we started recording about how do you share this book with people to get them to actually read it.
That's the big question.
And so you're saying it right there, like, I'm the problem. How do you tell them that you're the problem? And so they need to read this to help you. So that way it's not putting it on them whatsoever, right?
This is tricky though.
Yeah.
Because we want other people to read it.
Yeah.
Right?
So you want them to read it, but like, you got to come from, let's come from, like we're saying,
to be
like,
genuine. You can't just pretend it.
Yeah. Like, what are they going through? They're probably frustrated with you. So if you're saying, hey, this is going to help me, so you can call me out. Like I was saying, like I told my daughter, like, I want you to read this so you can call me out when I'm doing this. And she was like, okay, I'll read it. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm the problem, please help me. Right.
Yeah.
How do you get other people to not necessarily see that they need it, but like read it because you're asking them or trying to.
I guess that would come down to the real question. Oh, I'm so sorry, Stephanie.
No, go.
I think that would come down to the question. Do you want them to read it for themselves, or do you want them to read it because it would make your life better, right? And I think that determines your initiative, your motive.
How it's coming across.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's exactly how it's coming across.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that's the thing, like you're doing it because you think it'll benefit them, but it's also going to benefit you, right? So make sure you come across as, yeah.
So I would say that the challenge is that you actually you can't just be in a way, you can't just get to a place where you can present it the right way. You actually, in your mind, need to be in a place where you really think that this is going to, that you like want it for them, not for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and it's hard to even describe it because I'm still trying to figure it out, because there are times when I'm just like, I really do think that this will make a huge difference for them, but it's such a personal thing that, like, yeah, getting called out. And I just keep going back to leadership and self-deception and how did they do it with their employees, with Tom and whoever. I can't remember the characters' names. I'm terrible at that. But like it's easier when you're not in relationship with people. Because when you're in relationship with people at a very like close, intimate level, then there's always like triggers and defenses that go up a lot faster, and worries and whatever. And so it gets really, really tricky. I don't know how to solve it.
Why is that our defenses go up around those that are closest to us? No, I've yet to figure that out.
I think it's because you're more, it's just like any relationship that you actually love the person and care about them. You're more defensive. You like, it's like Mama Bear coming out, right? But like, you are just going to be like, what's the best word for it?
You love them so much, or you want to be loved so much?
I was going to say, I think you want them to think you're right, maybe. So I don't know. But that doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like
I
I don't
know.
I don't know.
Okay, well, apparently this answered some questions and opened up some others.
All of a sudden, yes. So you mentioned that, Stephanie. This has the answer to staying out of the box.
It really does, I think.
So would you say that thinking of others is how you stay out of the box?
Yep. That was my takeaway. But yeah.
Yeah.
But like, so we kind of knew that, I feel like, at the end of leadership and self-deception, right? We figured that out. Leadership and self-deception laid it out well enough so that we knew the answer is stay out of the box. But I really think that this one, with all of the case studies and the samples, examples that they share, it demonstrates how people were able to be this way first and then shift this way. And so I loved seeing like, this is what it was before, this is how it was after. Even like we said, the story of the authors themselves, how they were like, oh, they were trying to win this, like contract or award or whatever that would help the business. And so when they were focused on, we need this for the business to be viable and sustainable, then all of a sudden they were back in the box.
Yeah.
Just having those examples, that helps me to be able to now like apply and see more clearly when I personally get back in the box. But yeah, it would be helpful if people, like if we all were roommates, we could help each other, right?
Yeah, that's
It would
right.
be awesome if our families all had the same language so that they could have the same kind of conversations with us.
Well, and that's why I asked my daughter to read it, right? Like, can you call me out on this? Like, help me make sure I'm being outward, not inward, right? On my mindset in things. And I don't know, like maybe it's like a book club family time with
There you go.
discussions, right? Rather than
my whole family would be like, ew, no.
I know, it's how do you get people to read when they don't feel like they have time for it and they don't feel like they need it?
Well, I will have some of my people trapped in a car for a few hours this weekend.
Hey, this book's only 4 hours long.
I know, right?
It's pretty short.
Yeah, they've all been pretty short that way. So, and we listen to lots of books in the car.
Maybe that's the book that you're going to put on.
I just am never the one that picks them. So people will be like, what's up?
Be like, I need to read this for my book club. So we're listening to this.
There you go.
You can blame it on us, Stephanie. We'll take all the blame.
Perfect. We'll take it.
Cool.
Well, I've got a question for you guys. Okay. So we know what an outward mindset is. We know how beneficial it is. How do we adopt it? How do we basically, how can we begin an outward mindset?
Okay. Remember that question I shared? What can I do to be more helpful?
Okay.
I think you basically need to ask yourself that with like anything. Like it's maybe when you start feeling something, right? Or whenever you're going to start something, like how can I be helpful with this task? Mm-hmm. Or like, for example, I mean, because I read the book, I was more willing this morning because it snowed and it wasn't supposed to. I left the gym 10 minutes early so that I could shovel the driveway before my husband got home in hopes that I could help him by not allowing, like that way he wouldn't have to think about it when he got home. So like, how can we, like when you start something or just looking around, like how can you just notice things? I mean, I think of that when you're in a grocery store, right? Like, and it's again,
be aware.
Just being aware, like you see an old lady trying to reach something on a top shelf, right? Like just being aware of what's going on around you.
Do you remember the acronym in this book, SAM?
Mm-hmm.
SAM. I think that's kind of, I think, the answer to my question, I guess. But you guys are saying the exact same thing, right? See the needs of others.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you were saying, Megan. You saw
Mhm.
Eric's needs.
Okay, can I interject here?
Yeah.
Because my favorite part was when they got to the part about the caregivers or like the teachers or the, primary parent, whatever you want to call it, the people who are in these roles where they're constantly taking care of other people and seeing the needs and addressing the needs of other people. They're changing diapers, they're teaching, they're, like assisting elderly parents, like whatever it is, because it can be really, really easy to think you're doing the actions. You see a
Mm-hmm.
need, you shovel a driveway, you make breakfast, you unload the dishwasher, you go grocery shopping, you pick somebody up, when they need to, you take the car in for servicing. Like you can be doing a lot of things and still be inward.
Yeah.
Well, I
I
think
agree.
So
that,
you have to be so careful.
yeah, like after a while, you're like, why am I the one that always has to do this? Right. Like I feel that way sometimes. Like, why do I have to make breakfast again? Like, why can't someone else make breakfast or dinner? Right. Like,
Yeah,
you're sitting on the couch. Why can't I sit on the couch? Right.
right, right. And so for me, I would say that like what has helped me is that I have stopped just going through motions. I mean, I still go through motions, but I do it a lot more intentionally now. And it's an incremental process for me, but I actually have to like kind of pause almost instead of just go, 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 robotic like. I actually have to take a minute to assess and like, so I have this saying that I've been saying for years, especially when it comes to parenting. It's like, get curious before you get furious. Because
Yeah, there you go.
sometimes you can solve a lot of the issues at hand if you figure out what's going on. Like, what caused this? Why are we where we are? What's the story behind this? And so, again, we're back to people's story. And so, I try to take a moment to reflect, to pause, to ask a question, even if it's just internally, like, I know this about this person. Could this person be like, not feeling well today? Could they be stressed? Could they like have a headache? Could work have been difficult for them? School difficult for them? Like what are things that make people, behave poorly, I guess is the best way to say it, and make us start to think that they're being jerks to us or whatever, and get us back inside the box. Like, oh, woe is me. Why do I have to do this? I'm always the one. And then you start getting into that martyr victim mindset or whatever. And so I think that's really tricky. You have to kind of stay out of that. Even if you feel like you're seeing others, you really have to take a moment and pause and reflect and literally try to get inside them. Ask questions if you need to, like, how was your day? Did that meeting go okay? Like, are you feeling well? How's your stress level? Like whatever it might be. What was
So,
difficult for you today?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Austin, you didn't finish on the acronym. So I was
Yeah.
finding it so I
Did
could
you find it?
finish the other two.
The others.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
Stephanie actually kind of went into it, right? Like
yeah.
you saw the needs of others, and then she's like, well, sometimes it's not working, this, that, and the other. Maybe you're just going through the motions. So the A is adjusting your efforts, right? You got to change sometimes what you're doing
Mm-hmm.
if based on the M, measuring your impact, if it's not having the desired outcome, right? So those are like
That
three
one's tricky
steps.
to me. I still haven't figured out the measure impact all the time.
Well, I think you sounded like you said it.
Yeah,
When
you explained it. You just didn't give like each individual.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you said, sometimes you just go through the motions and we're not actually like we're just saying, hey, habitually, how's your day? When you can go into specifics like how was that meeting? How was your drive home? How was whatever, right? We can adjust our actions to make sure we're getting that outcome. Because how often are we like, hey, how was your day? Good.
Well,
Okay.
you're getting the data to be able to
Ooh, I like
address
that.
So
Yeah.
like you're
Data.
getting the data that you need to be able to be outward mindset rather than
Exactly.
just some random term.
Yeah.
So how can we measure impact when it seems kind of not tactical?
So are you
Well,
meaning like with relationships, or because I mean business, it's a little easier.
Yeah,
'cause-
business, it's easier. So more
Yeah.
with relationships. Yeah, those interpersonal relationships. How can you measure effort?
I
or
would
measure
honestly think
impact?
like my biggest thing would be, okay, well, what do you want out of the relationship? And did that move you a little closer? Like,
yeah,
is
I
your
think that
impact, right? Like that's your measurement.
yeah, I think the impact is different based on each scenario, right? Like
Okay, can I?
how did you help your spouse, I guess, would be a measurable impact,
I
right?
love that one. I like how helpful was I,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and did did I help alleviate any of their problems? I think are
Right.
questions to ask instead of like, because for years for me, the measurement that I was going for was the change I could like impact in others or instill in others, or hopefully invite others to experience. And whenever I didn't see that change, I'm like, fine, what is the point?
Well, I think of it this way. I'm kind of on a
Can't
different
change it.
side maybe of the coin than you guys are here, but I see my wife always doing the dishes, right? And so I can see that need, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I could do the dishes. And so I'll start putting them away, but then I realize I'm putting them in all the wrong spots. So she has to come in and rearrange everything I just did. Did I actually help her in what, and try to put these dishes
Ooh,
away,
that's a good
you
example,
know?
Austin.
So I will have to say, because we had this thing, I mean, it's always around that stuff, right? Like I'm making dinner, everyone else is sitting on the couch, and then I have two other things I still have to do, but
Right,
they're still on the couch, right? And
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, like I'm upset, and
right.
they're, like you didn't ask us to help you. And well, I shouldn't have to ask you. Like you should just come ask me. So that's where I'm taking it is, getting the data. Okay, you go up to them. I see that you always do the dishes, but you do it in a particular way. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Yeah.
Or,
Or
like,
show me where you like the
yeah,
dishes to go. Like,
Where
help
you
me
like them.
know.
yeah, exactly. So and that's why I said, like, I just want you to ask me. Like, you
Yeah.
can ask me. So that's, I want to just put it out there. Like, for me, like, I was obviously not outward mindset at that moment, but I just wanted somebody to ask me. Like, even if they would have asked me and I would have said no, like, I would
Okay.
have had a better attitude,
So that's
Yeah.
totally
right? Like, so I'm
100%.
like, that's
If
like the
somebody
whole
just
thing.
offers the help,
Mhm.
I'm already like, nah, just go sit down and relax.
Yeah, right. So I'm like,
I just
how
know
can
that.
we learn that, right? Like, just asking, like, hey,
Yeah.
can I
Mhm.
help you with something?
Okay, so I think that's super interesting. So if we just want people to ask us, then maybe that's something that we can do for other people. I think that's what
Mhm.
you're trying to get at,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's
I
just
think
like,
that's
so asking,
Which is giving you the
not just-
data.
yeah, not just generic questions, but like, hey, like we were saying, do you have a headache? Do you need food? Can I rub your back? Like whatever it is, but try to get really specific. Is there something I see that you're doing this right now? Is there something that else that you need help with? Or
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Austin, back to the dishes, right? Like, hey, how can I help you by putting these dishes together or way together so I know where to put them in the
like if I just
future?
get them out of the
Or
dishwasher and stack
Yeah.
them, is that helpful?
yeah.
yeah.
What?
Or like,
Yeah.
are you
You'd
putting
ask
them in
different
and I'm putting
questions.
them away? Like, what's the,
Yeah, exactly. Like,
because like we had that for a while too, where I would make dinner and my husband would clean up. Like we had this routine because guess what? I was done after I made dinner. I didn't want to do anything else, right? So
Yeah.
like, how can you like put together this, you know, that would be kind of your output.
I love that. I actually
Sure.
I wish I would have saved it. I saw an Instagram reel where this guy was talking about like not just physical work, but mental work. That I think in his case, it was specifically a spouse or a partner or whatever. He was just like, and he gave demonstrations of like, a guy trying to be helpful for his gal, and some guys might think like that they're being helpful by saying, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you have a list for me? Okay, kind of helpful, but not, because he's doing the physical work, but not the mental work that goes with it. And I thought it was super interesting. So anyway, what you were saying, Austin, made me think of that, where it's just like, it's partly helpful. How can we be like fully helpful?
Yeah.
In those situations. I love that. Like, I think I'm being helpful when I'm mowing the lawn for my husband or whatever, instead of him doing it. But maybe what would be helpful is to not have him need to remind me that it's the day to do the lawn mowing.
Yeah, it's always hard to know, especially because I think it's easy to get defensive when you feel like you're trying to help someone, and then they're just criticizing how you're helping. But I guess it's easy to say, well, as far as the M goes, measuring your impact, were you helping?
Right. So if
Just because you were doing the
they're
work.
critiquing, then maybe you weren't being as helpful as you thought.
Yeah. That's a really difficult way for me to look at it.
So what I'm hearing you say is we need to have a little bit of humility.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. That's actually a very difficult attribute.
Yeah, I like that if you think of measure as, okay, was I really helpful? Did I help them?
Just because I felt like I was helping doesn't mean necessarily
you were helping, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Actually, that's like, if we could add anything to the book, I would add something like that. Just because I think I'm being helpful doesn't necessarily mean I really was. Like,
well, I love
maybe that'll be in the next one.
Yeah, I love the story at the end where they're talking, like, this lady in the back of this conference or course, or not course, but they're teaching, right? This group, and she raises her hand and says, well, my brother, was a convict. We had to move away, so we had lots of bad feelings towards him. And when he came back out, and we were all mean to him. And then I decided, well, what can I do for him? And so she started just writing like a note to him about the family every month. And she still hasn't heard to him. And it's been like 7 years. But it doesn't mean that he's not appreciative of it, right? Like, he's probably to the point that like they will never accept me, and that's what it is. But he's probably like, oh, I'm really glad I'm getting this information. And even if not, like, she's not doing it for herself. And that's what she said. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for him.
Yeah, whether she knows what kind of, like, maybe he's just so angry, he throws them away every month and doesn't even read them. Maybe he does. But at least for her, it softens her heart to a place where she's like thinking of something that she hopes will be helpful to him, for him.
Well, I honestly think, like, even if he's throwing it away, he knows that every month she is thinking of him.
Yep.
Like, deep down, that's going to mean something in itself.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, because for her, what's her way to measure impact?
She doesn't have any way to measure.
She doesn't have a good way.
No, so that's what I was just going to say. Like, sometimes you might not be able to measure.
Guess what maybe her measurement is?
Maybe her measurement is down the road. Maybe he hasn't responded by year 7, but maybe, year 8, year 9, whenever.
Maybe year 40.
Yeah. He reaches out and tries to reconnect with her. Who knows?
So in the meantime, what is it doing for her?
Nothing.
Well, it's making her better. Like, she's not,
it's making her
it's angry at him anymore, right?
I guess that's true, huh?
Yeah. So
that is true.
We think it's doing nothing for her because she's not getting these tangible physical, measurements and data points and whatever. But it's helping her to continue to see.
I think it's helping her as like recovering, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And to keep her mindset outward.
Yeah. So, it makes it, I had a roommate once who every time we would start like, trash talking somebody, she would always take the defense for them. because they typically weren't around, right? It was in the presence of these people, so they were absentee. And she would always just start chiming in and saying like, well, what if, and what about this, and maybe that, and whatever. And and so her phrase was always like, I'm just here to defend those who aren't here to defend themselves.
That's funny.
That's so awesome. I don't know if she knows how much we're talking, 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago that happened. So
Yeah, and she had the mindset before
yeah,
maybe we even knew scientifically about what it was.
yeah, totally. So next month, are we reading The Anatomy of Peace?
I think we finish it off. What do you guys think?
Yeah, mine as well.
Okay.
I've been
Okay.
happy with everything they've produced so far.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Okay, perfect.
like I said, I feel like this is the core for pretty much every other business book or leadership book or parenting book out there. So
Yeah.
Well, I liked how you said, Stephanie, you like to reread it every year. And I think that's a very good key, like, because we were like, how do you stay out of the box, right? And it's just reading, re-evaluating, whatever. So I like that we're reading it and keep reading all the other editions, because then you can take it.
I think this year, even though we're reading one per month, I think in the following years, it'll be just probably every December I go through all three of them. Since I now have physical and audible versions of all.
Version.
So,
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, well, should we end it there?
Yeah, I do want to just have one last comment on page 166. It just kind of recaps. It recaps the chapters like 9 through 17. And I think it does earlier in the book, like in the earlier section. It'll recap the earlier chapters a little bit better. But I did like how it says this. It just says to start with the mindset and apply that SAM. The see others, adjust efforts, and measure impact. And don't wait for others to change. Just like the story we were talking about, don't wait for others to change. You have to be in a place where it's completely like your efforts and your work is independent of what anybody else's actions are.
That's what I was going to say too, is, you can't be expecting others to make the first move. You have to be able to make the first move to an outward mindset. And most importantly, not expect anything back.
Never. Yeah. Yep.
Which is a good, I remember, like, we want other people to read this book, but you can't force them to do it. So you show them, and then they'll see the change and should hopefully correlate the two. But
yeah, if someone was like, wow, how in the world did you learn to be this kind of person? Like, well, hey, here's this book. This is what I've adopted. How powerful would that be?
Yeah.
When they ask you,
so I think you could also just like, just like we shared it with each other, whatever, like I've shared it plenty of times with lots of people that I didn't think needed it, but I thought that they would enjoy the book. And so I think that if you can just come at it from a genuine, like, hey, like whether or not you read it, whether or not you change, like, I think you would actually enjoy reading these books. Like, so find the thing that is true for the person that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Well, and they give you so many different examples that you can tie it into anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. Awesome. Okay, implementation time, boys and girls. Let's go.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know. I think so I almost was thinking that when we were doing this, at the end of this book, they had a call to action, like, okay, how are you going to make the change? So how are we going to be 1% better this next month at outward mindset?
Well, I have a goal sheet that I have every year. And I have been putting this kind of stuff, Arbinger stuff on it for a couple of years now, including the see others, adjust effort, or adjust what is it?
Adjust efforts.
Just efforts and measure impact. I've been having that on for a while. So one of the things that I try to do is basically I found that I needed to get to a place where I was way more comfortable admitting when I was wrong. Or even the idea, the notion, the suggestion that I might be wrong, and being able to say, yeah, you're right. Like instead of getting defensive and justifying my behaviors or making excuses or explaining things away, just stop and say, like try to really look at it from somebody else's point of view and say, you might be right. You might be right. Four very powerful words.
There you go. I like that. I think I'm going to implement it. I'm specifically for for Maylee and I think it'll be the amount of times she has to critique what I help her with. I think that's going to be my measurement there. Let's see if I can adjust. Thanks.
I love
Worth a
it.
shot.
It's worth a shot. You know what?
It's worth a shot.
There's only room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there you go.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, I'm going to, obviously, I told you what I'm doing with the app is I'm actually going to talk to people and see. So like, that's what I've decided is.
So you're applying it specifically to this project that you're working on.
Yes, I'm going to apply it to the project, but I'm also going to, I'm going to try harder to really see issues in my family. Does that make sense? Where they're coming from. Like my son gave me one the other day after reading this book and I was like, he's right. Like, and I said that, I was like, you're right. Like, you're totally right. Like,
be able to say that more
I'm
often.
wrong. Like, you're right. So if I can start seeing how they're seeing stuff, because that's the thing, if they're too afraid to tell me to, and that was part of this book too, is if people can't even tell you because they're afraid about losing their jobs or whatever it was, right? Like, my kids are afraid to tell me because I'll get upset. Like, I need to be in a mindset that they can tell me stuff and it might be stuff that is about me and it's okay, like, to take it.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I'm excited for the anatomy of teeth next time. Here we go. Changing all of our mindsets and making our lives better and everyone else is around us. I mean, that's the other thing. You have to think of this too, is it's not just about us, right?
No.
Right.
Yeah. So you're doing this for others. You're thinking of others by doing it. So
absolutely.
That's the goal.
If more people could implement these kinds of things, then like think how awesome the world would be.
Oh, there'd be lots of non-issues.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah.